The evening was cold and quiet. Gray clouds covered the sky, and a soft wind moved through the old cemetery. Dry leaves rolled across the ground, making soft sounds between the graves. It was a place full of silence, memories, and pain. Every year, on the same day, an elderly couple came here. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison were known as one of the richest couples in the city. They owned companies, buildings, and land. People respected them. Some even feared them. But none of their money could heal the one thing they lost many years ago, their only son. Their son had died in a car accident 20 years ago. Since that day, their lives changed. The large house became quiet. The laughter disappeared. Success no longer felt important. Only regret and sadness stayed with them. Mrs. Harrison gently cleaned the dust from the gravestone. Her hands trembled as she touched the name written on it. Her eyes filled with tears, just like every year. "We miss you," she whispered softly. Mr. Harrison stood beside her, silent. He never cried in public, but the pain in his eyes was clear. He stared at the grave, as if waiting for something impossible to happen. The cemetery was almost empty when suddenly footsteps broke the silence. Fast uneven footsteps. Before they could turn around, a rough voice shouted from behind them. "Mother! Father! I am alive!" The words cut through the air like lightning. Both of them froze. A dirty man stood a few steps away. His clothes were old and torn. His beard was messy, and his face was thin from hunger. He looked like a beggar who had been living on the streets for years. Security guards quickly moved forward, thinking he was dangerous. But the man did not run. He looked directly at the couple, his eyes full of emotion. Tears rolled down his face. "It's me," he said again, his voice shaking. "I came back." Mr. Harrison's face turned hard with anger. "Get him away from us," he said coldly. "This is not a place for jokes." The guards grabbed the beggar's arms, but he did not fight. He kept looking at the old woman. Mrs. Harrison felt something strange. Fear, confusion, and something else she could not explain. The man's eyes felt familiar, but her mind refused to accept it. "You don't recognize me?" the beggar asked softly. Mr. Harrison stepped forward angrily. "My son is dead. I buried him myself." The beggar shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "You buried an empty coffin." The words made the air feel heavy. The guard stopped for a moment, unsure what to do. Mrs. Harrison's heart began to beat faster. The beggar continued speaking quickly, as if afraid he would not get another chance. He spoke about a small lake near their old house, about a red bicycle their son once crashed when he was 10 years old, about a secret nickname Mrs. Harrison used only when her son was sick. Things no stranger should know. Mrs. Harrison's face turned pale. "Ow, how do you know that?" she whispered. The beggar smiled sadly. "Because you told me when I had a fever. You stayed awake all night." Mr. Harrison's voice became louder. Enough. Anyone could learn these things. But inside, even he felt a small crack in his certainty. The beggar looked at the gravestone, then back at them. "I tried to come home," he said quietly, "but someone made sure I never could." Before anyone could ask more, the guards pulled him away. His voice echoed as they dragged him toward the gate. "I didn't die. Please believe me." Silence returned to the cemetery. Mrs. Harrison stared at the grave, her hands shaking. For the first time in 20 years, doubt entered her heart. That night, neither of them could sleep. And in the darkness, one question refused to leave their minds. What if the dead son was never dead at all? That night, the house felt colder than usual. The Harrison mansion was large and beautiful, but silence filled every corner. The servants moved quietly, afraid to disturb their employers. The old couple sat in separate rooms, both awake, both thinking about the same thing. The beggar's voice. Mrs. Harrison could still hear it clearly in her mind. "Mother, I am alive." She tried to convince herself it was nonsense. A cruel trick. Maybe the man had learned things about their family somehow. Rich people often became targets. That was the logical answer. But her heart refused to agree. She remembered his eyes. The way he looked at her, not with greed, but with pain. Like someone who had been lost for a very long time. Across the house, Mr. Harrison poured himself another drink. He was angry, but not at the beggar. He was angry at the doubt growing inside him. For 20 years, he had accepted his son's death. He had forced himself to move forward. Now, one stranger had opened an old wound again. "This is foolish," he muttered to himself. "The dead don't return." But sleep never came. The next morning, Mrs. Harrison made a decision without telling her husband. She asked her assistant to find the beggar. Quietly. No media. No attention. 2 days later, the man was found near a small shelter on the edge of the city. He was weak and sick but alive. Mrs. Harrison went alone. When she entered the shelter, the smell of medicine and damp clothes filled the air. The beggar sat near a window, staring outside. When he saw her, his eyes widened with surprise and relief. "You came," he said softly. She stood at a distance, unsure what to feel. Up close, she could see the lines on his face, the years of struggle. He looked nothing like the young boy she remembered, and yet something felt familiar. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. "How do you know those things?" The man lowered his eyes, as if searching for words. "I don't remember everything," he said slowly. "After the accident, I woke up in a hospital. I didn't know my name. I didn't know where I belonged." He explained that people told him he had no family, no records, no identity. Over time, he was moved from place to place. He worked small jobs, sometimes illegal ones, just to survive. Memories came back in pieces, dreams, voices, flashes of the past. "I remembered your voice first," he said. "You were crying." Mrs. Harrison felt her chest tighten. He rolled up his sleeve and showed an old scar near his elbow. Her breath caught in her throat. Their son had received that exact injury as a child after falling from a tree. Her hands began to shake. This could be coincidence," she whispered, though her voice lacked confidence. The man nodded slowly. "Maybe, but there is more." He described a hidden wooden box in their old house, a box where their son kept drawings and letters. He even described the drawing of a dog he once made for his mother. Mrs. Harrison stepped back, overwhelmed. That box had never been shown to anyone outside the family. "How is this possible?" she asked. The beggar looked at her with tired eyes. "I tried to come back years ago," he said quietly. "But someone stopped me." She frowned. "Stopped you?" He hesitated, fear appearing on his face. "There were men," he said. "They told me my past was dangerous. They said if I returned, people would get hurt." A cold feeling ran through her. Before she could ask more, Mr. Harrison's car arrived outside. He had discovered where she went. He entered the shelter, his expression hard and controlled. "This ends today," he said firmly. "You are confusing my wife and using our pain." The beggar looked at him, sadness in his eyes. "I don't want your money," he said. "I only want the truth." Mr. Harrison turned away, refusing to listen. But as he walked toward the door, the beggar spoke one last sentence. "The night of the accident, someone else was in the car." Mr. Harrison stopped. For the first time, fear replaced anger, because that detail was never made public, and only one person should have known it. After leaving the shelter, silence followed Mr. and Mrs. Harrison all the way home. The city lights passed outside the car windows, but neither of them spoke. The beggar's last words stayed in Mr. Harrison's mind. Someone else was in the car. That detail had never appeared in newspapers. Not even close friends knew about it. Only the police and a few people from the company had seen the full accident report. Mr. Harrison told himself it was still a trick. Maybe someone had leaked information years ago. Maybe the man guessed. But deep inside, doubt continued to grow. That night, Mrs. Harrison finally spoke. "What if we made a mistake?" she asked quietly. Mr. Harrison shook his head. "We identified the body. The hospital confirmed it." "Yes," she replied softly, "but we never saw his face clearly." The words hung heavily in the room. For years, they had avoided thinking about that night. Everything had happened quickly. The accident, the hospital calls, the funeral. They trusted the people handling it. They were too broken to ask questions. Now, those memories felt incomplete. The next morning, Mr. Harrison made a decision he never thought he would make. He ordered his assistant to reopen the accident files. Old reports were brought from storage. Dust covered the folders. Some papers were missing. Others looked copied instead of original. The more they read, the more strange things appeared. The doctor who signed the death certificate had left the country only months after the accident. The police officer who handled the case retired early and could not be contacted. Even the hospital records showed corrections made days after the incident. Mrs. Harrison felt cold. Why would anyone change this? Mr. Harrison had no answer. Meanwhile, the beggar struggled with his own memories. Pieces of the past returned slowly, like broken images in a dream. Loud metal sounds, glass breaking, someone shouting, and then darkness. Sometimes he remembered waking up in a room where people argued nearby. He survived. One voice had said, "That's a problem." Another voice replied. The memory always ended there. Days passed, and tension grew inside the Harrison home. Mr. Harrison began calling old employees who worked for the company 20 years ago. Most remembered little. Some avoided answering questions. One name appeared again and again: Daniel Reeves, Mr. Harrison's former business partner. After the son's death, Reeves had helped manage the company during the difficult time. He later sold his shares and disappeared from public life. At the time, Mr. Harrison had been grateful for his help. Now, something felt wrong. Mrs. Harrison visited the beggar again, bringing clean clothes and food. He seemed uncomfortable accepting help, as if he did not believe he deserved kindness anymore. "Do you remember anything else?" she asked gently. The man closed his eyes, trying to focus. "A black car," he said slowly. "Not ours. It followed us before the accident." Her heart skipped a beat. He pressed his hands against his head, frustrated. "I remember fear. Someone didn't want me to reach home." That night, Mr. Harrison received a call from an old company lawyer. His voice sounded nervous. "There's something you should know," the lawyer said quietly. "After your son's accident, Mr. Reeves personally handled all legal matters. He insisted on speed, no investigation." Mr. Harrison felt the ground shift beneath him. "Why?" he asked. The lawyer hesitated. "He said it was to protect you from more pain." The call ended, but the unease remained. Across the city, someone else was also watching. Inside a dark office, a man stared at recent reports about the Harrison family, asking questions again. His expression turned cold. "So," he muttered, "the past is waking up." He picked up his phone. "Find the beggar," he ordered calmly, "and make sure he stays silent." Back at the mansion, Mr. Harrison stood alone in his study, looking at an old photograph of his son. For the first time in 20 years, he allowed himself to ask the question he feared most. What if his son had not died in an accident? What if someone had taken him away on purpose? And if that was true, who had benefited from his loss? The truth was no longer a distant fear. It was now close, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Inside the Harrison mansion, the atmosphere had changed. The house that once felt quiet now felt tense, as if something dangerous was slowly moving closer. Mr. Harrison spent long hours in his study, reading old files again and again. Every page raised more questions instead of answers. One name refused to disappear: Daniel Reeves. For years, Reeves had been more than a business partner. He was trusted like family. When the accident happened, he handled everything: the hospital arrangements, legal papers, even the funeral preparations. At the time, Mr. Harrison believed Reeves was helping him survive the worst moment of his life. Now, that same memory felt disturbing. Mrs. Harrison noticed the change in her husband. The strong man who once made decisions without hesitation now looked tired and uncertain. "You trusted him," she said gently one evening. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. "Yes, I trusted him with everything." Meanwhile, the beggar, the man who claimed to be their son, was beginning to remember more. The memories came suddenly, often at night. Loud noises woke him from sleep. The smell of smoke. The feeling of being lifted into another vehicle after the crash. He remembered voices again. He must not remember who he is. The words echoed in his mind like a warning. Mrs. Harrison continued visiting him, bringing food and clean clothes. Slowly, the distance between them faded. She found herself watching small habits. The way he tilted his head while thinking, the way he smiled nervously. They were small things, but painfully familiar. One afternoon, while talking, he suddenly froze. "I remember a ring," he said quietly. "A ring?" she asked. "Yes, a man wearing a silver ring." He argued with someone at the hospital. Mrs. Harrison's heart tightened. Daniel Reeves always wore a silver ring with the company's symbol. At the same time, Mr. Harrison received new information from a private investigator. Financial records from 20 years ago showed something strange. After the son's death, Reeves gained temporary control over major company decisions. Several large deals were signed during that period, deals that made Reeves extremely wealthy. The timing was too perfect. Mr. Harrison stared at the documents, his hands slowly tightening into fists. "Was it all planned?" he whispered. Across the city, Daniel Reeves sat calmly in his office, looking at reports about the Harrison investigation. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes were cold. "They should have left the past buried," he said quietly. He picked up his phone again. "Watch the man closely. If he talks too much, we have a problem." Days later, the danger became real. The beggar was walking back to the shelter late at night when a car stopped beside him. Two men stepped out. Their faces were hidden under caps. "Someone wants you to leave the city," one of them said. The beggar tried to walk away, but they grabbed him. A struggle followed. He managed to escape, running through dark streets until he collapsed near a crowded market. Shaken and injured, he realized something terrifying. Someone was afraid of him, remembering the truth. When Mrs. Harrison saw his injuries the next morning, fear replaced doubt completely. "This is not coincidence," she said. "Someone is trying to stop you." For the first time, the beggar looked truly afraid. "I don't want to bring danger to you," he said. "Maybe I should disappear again." "No," she replied firmly. "You already lost 20 years. No more running." That evening, Mr. Harrison finally admitted what he had been avoiding. "If Reeves is involved," he said slowly, "then this was never an accident." The realization felt like betrayal cutting deep into old wounds. The man they trusted most might have destroyed their family. But the worst part was still ahead, because Reeves now knew one thing for certain. The boy he thought was gone forever was alive. And this time, he would not allow mistakes. Fear entered their lives quietly, but it did not leave. After the attack, everything changed. The beggar, the man who might be the Harrisons' lost son, no longer felt safe anywhere. Every passing car made him nervous. Every stranger's glance felt like a threat. For years he had lived without fear because he believed he had nothing to lose. Now, for the first time, he had something again, a past, a family, and the truth. And someone wanted to take it away. Mrs. Harrison insisted he move to a private apartment arranged by her. It was small but safe, guarded quietly without attracting attention. She visited often, bringing food and speaking to him gently, trying to rebuild a connection that time had broken. But the man struggled inside. He looked at clean clothes and warm meals as if they belonged to someone else. "I don't fit here," he said one evening. "Your son lived a good life. I survived on the streets." Mrs. Harrison shook her head softly. "You survived. That is not something to be ashamed of." Still, doubt remained in his heart. Years of loneliness had taught him not to trust hope. Meanwhile, Mr. Harrison moved forward carefully. He ordered a DNA test, determined to end all uncertainty. If the result proved the truth, no one could deny it anymore. The samples were taken quietly. Only a few people knew, but secrets do not stay hidden for long. Within days, rumors began to spread. A local news outlet published a story about a mysterious beggar claiming to be the lost heir of a billionaire family. The story spread quickly online. People laughed. Some called it a scam. Others accused the beggar of trying to steal money. The pressure grew. Outside the apartment, reporters began waiting. Cameras flashed whenever he stepped outside. Hurtful comments filled social media. Strangers judged him without knowing anything about his life. The man watched the news silently one night, hearing people call him a liar. Maybe they were right, he thought. Maybe he did not belong anywhere. At the same time, Daniel Reeves made his move. Through lawyers and public statements, he claimed the beggar was a fraud taking advantage of an old couple's grief. He spoke calmly, pretending concern for the Harrison family's reputation. "People like this appear when money is involved," Reeves said during an interview. "It's unfortunate but common." His words turned public opinion even stronger against the beggar. Mr. Harrison watched the interview with anger burning inside him. For the first time, he saw Reeves not as a friend, but as a man protecting something, or hiding something. Days later, danger returned. Late at night, the electricity in the apartment suddenly went out. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Someone tried to force the door open. The guards reacted quickly, and the intruders escaped before police arrived. It was clear now. This was no longer about doubt or identity. Someone was trying to erase him again. Shaken, the man sat alone after the incident, his hands trembling. "This keeps happening because of me," he said quietly when Mrs. Harrison arrived. "Maybe it's better if I disappear." Tears filled her eyes. "You already disappeared once," she said, "and we lost 20 years. I will not lose you again." Her words stayed with him long after she left. The next morning, the DNA results finally arrived at the Harrison mansion. A sealed envelope sat on Mr. Harrison's desk. The answer to everything was inside. His hands hovered over it, but he did not open it immediately. Fear stopped him, because once the truth was known, nothing would ever be the same again. Across the city, Daniel Reeves also waited for news, his expression calm but tense. He understood one thing clearly. If the results confirmed the truth, his past would finally come into the light. And some truths destroyed everything. The envelope remained unopened on the desk as night fell, and everyone waited for the moment that would change their lives forever. The envelope stayed on Mr. Harrison's desk for several minutes. He stared at it, as if it carried the weight of 20 lost years. His hands felt heavy. For so long, he had lived with certainty. His son was gone, and nothing could change that. Now, one piece of paper had the power to destroy that belief forever. Mrs. Harrison stood beside him, her eyes filled with fear and hope at the same time. "Open it," she whispered. Mr. Harrison took a slow breath and finally broke the seal. The room became silent as his eyes moved across the report. The words were clear, cold, scientific, but their meaning was powerful. The DNA matched. For a moment, he could not speak. His hands began to shake. The paper slipped slightly as reality settled in. He's our son," he said quietly. Mrs. Harrison covered her mouth, tears falling instantly. Years of grief, guilt, and hope crashed together. The child she believed she buried was alive, and had been suffering somewhere alone all this time. But the truth did not bring only happiness. It brought pain. Mr. Harrison sat down slowly, his face pale. Memories returned. The day he refused to listen in the cemetery, the anger in his voice, the way he ordered the guards to take the man away. "I'll push him away," he said, his voice breaking. "My own son." Mrs. Harrison placed a hand on his shoulder. "We didn't know," she said softly. "Someone made sure we didn't know. And now that someone had to face the consequences." When they told their son the results, he did not react the way they expected. He did not cry or celebrate. He simply sat quietly, staring at the floor. "So if it's true," he said after a long silence, "I really belonged somewhere." There was no joy in his voice, only exhaustion. Years on the streets had changed him. Trust did not come easily anymore. Family felt like a word from another life. Mrs. Harrison hugged him carefully, afraid he might pull away. For a moment, he stayed still. Then slowly, he allowed himself to lean into her. It was the first time in 20 years that mother and son stood together again. Meanwhile, Mr. Harrison moved quickly. The DNA results gave him confidence. He contacted the police and handed over everything: old accident reports, missing records, financial documents connected to Daniel Reeves. The investigation reopened immediately. Under pressure, old witnesses began to speak. A retired nurse remembered a wealthy man insisting on transferring the injured boy to another facility. A former driver admitted seeing Reeves at the hospital the night of the accident. The pieces finally connected. Reeves had learned that the young heir planned to change company leadership once he became older. Fear of losing power turned into desperation. The accident was arranged to remove him. When the boy survived, Reeves made sure he disappeared instead. The truth shocked everyone. Reeves was arrested days later. As police led him away, his calm expression finally broke. "I did what was necessary," he said coldly. Business is not about feelings. But for the Harrison family, this was never about business. It was about stolen time. Still, victory did not feel complete. Justice could not return the lost years. It could not erase the nights their son spent hungry and alone. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere slowly changed. The house that once felt empty now felt unfamiliar again, like a place learning how to live. The son walked through rooms filled with memories he could barely recognize. Photographs of a childhood he only remembered in fragments covered the walls. "I feel like a guest," he admitted one evening. Mr. Harrison looked at him with regret. "Then we will start again," he said quietly. "Not as strangers, as family." The road ahead was uncertain. Healing would take time. But one thing was finally clear. The truth was no longer buried. And for the first time in 20 years, the Harrison family had a chance to live not with grief, but with hope. Life did not return to normal overnight. The truth had been revealed. Justice had been served. Daniel Reeves was gone, and the world now knew what really happened 20 years ago. Newspapers called it a shocking story. Television channels spoke about betrayal and survival. But inside the Harrison home, the story felt quieter, more personal. The man who once lived as a beggar now lived in a house filled with memories that did not fully belong to him. Every room reminded him of a life he had missed. Photographs showed birthdays, holidays, and smiles frozen in time, moments that continued without him. Sometimes he stood in front of those pictures for a long time, trying to feel something familiar. But memories did not return so easily. Mrs. Harrison tried her best to make him comfortable. She cooked his favorite meals from childhood, even when he could not remember liking them. She spoke gently, never forcing conversations, allowing him space to adjust. Mr. Harrison changed too. The strong businessman who once controlled everything learned to be patient. Instead of giving orders, he listened. He understood that money could rebuild houses but not broken time. One evening, they sat together for dinner. The conversation was simple, small stories, quiet laughter, long pauses. It felt awkward at times, but real. For the first time, the son smiled without sadness. "I don't remember this place," he admitted, "but I want to try." Those words meant more than anything else. Healing began in small moments. Morning walks in the garden, watching old home videos together, sharing stories from both lives, the life that was lost and the life that survived. Slowly, trust returned. Still, the past did not disappear completely. Some nights, the son woke up from bad dreams, remembering cold streets and lonely years. During those moments, Mrs. Harrison would sit beside him quietly, just like she once did when he was a child with a fever. Nothing needed to be said. Time itself became the medicine. Weeks later, the family decided to visit the cemetery again. It was the same place where everything had changed. The same cold wind moved through the trees. The same silence surrounded the graves. But this time, things felt different. They stood in front of the gravestone that once carried his name. For years, it had symbolized loss. Now it felt like a reminder of how close they came to losing everything forever. The son looked at the stone for a long moment. "I used to think I had no past," he said quietly. "Now I realize I had people waiting for me." Mrs. Harrison held his hand tightly. Mr. Harrison stepped forward and touched the stone gently. "This grave kept our pain," he said, "but it doesn't define us anymore." Later, the gravestone was removed. The empty space remained, open and peaceful, no longer a place of mourning, but a place of closure. As they walked away together, the sun slowly broke through the clouds, warming the cold ground. The future was uncertain. 20 years could never be returned. Some wounds would always remain, but they were no longer broken apart. They were together again. The story did not end with revenge or wealth. It ended with something simpler: forgiveness, patience, and a second chance at being a family. And sometimes that was the greatest miracle of all, because life does not always give people another beginning. But when it does, only love can make it worth living.